So I'm sure we've all had this experience where we've had an intense period or a hectic period and then we want to take a break from all of it. And so we do something fun only for part of that activity, putting the intensity right back into our heads and almost always on the same topic that we originally or the same context that we originally tried to get away from. And I had a similar experience recently where I've had a hectic few weeks, part of which I went into discussions around stress and anxiety, fear, so on and so forth with my own cohort of psychology enthusiasts. And I thought, okay, I've had enough, right? I've listened to enough podcasts, I've read enough material, I've reflected enough, I've spoken enough. Let me take a break and do something light. And part of my own fun activity or relaxation was picking up this book called as the Thurber Carnival, which is a collection of short stories by James Thurber. And all was well till about 200 odd pages. And then I got to the story called The Night the Bed Fell. And one character in the story called Briggs Beall, who happens to be the cousin of the narrator of the story, he made sure that he transported me right back into the epicenter of the same topics of fear and anxiety. And I'll tell you how. So this man, Briggs Beall, has this irrational fear or even belief, I would say, that if he sleeps off too deeply, he's going to stop breathing and he'll die. Right? So he's, like I said, he's come to stay with his cousin who's the narrator, and he has an alarm clock that goes off on the hour, every hour, and that's going to wake him up so he can get up and make sure that he's breathing and then continue to stay alive, right? That at least that's his approach to dealing with his own potential fatality, right? But the cousin, who happens to be a nice guy, tells him, what, don't worry about the alarm clock and all. I am a light sleeper. So what I'll do is I will make sure that I wake you up on the hour. And another thing is I'm a pretty sensitive person, right? So if you're not breathing but you're gasping or you've stopped breathing, I will know that, right? And I'll immediately wake you up so nothing untoward happens. So Briggs Beall is a bit reassured with this, so he puts away his alarm clock. But then what happens is, in one corner of his mind, he is doubtful. What if my cousin sleeps off deeply for a short period at least, right? And what happens if that coincides with my own period of deep sleep and then I'm not able to wake up on time to save my life or to kind of rescue myself from potential death? So what he does is, as a precautionary measure, he has a glass of some kind of a perfume called, I think, the Spirits of Camphor. Yeah, I think that's what it is called. And he places it by his bedside and he says, in the event my cousin sleeps off too deeply and I sleep off too deeply and I'm not breathing anymore, I will wake up, smell this and rescue myself, right? So it sounds pretty stupid, right? So the question would be, if I'm not even breathing, if I'm Briggs Beall, I'm sleeping so deeply, I've stopped breathing, and the only person who could wake me up and bring me back to life is also asleep, how can I wake up or how can I get up on my own and breathe this and bring myself back to life? That's the question that will obviously pop into every one of our minds. And if we think Briggs Beall is stupid in being so irrational, so paranoid about the whole situation, or in dealing with the solution to it, in one way or the other, this is how we deal with most of our own fears and anxieties, right? And the reason I say that is because, one, most of the fear and anxiety situations that we visualize in terms of, say, this is how it will happen, or it is to this degree that it will happen, almost always never manifests in the same way or to the same degree, right? Number one. Number two, when somebody is there to help, to offer protection, to offer help, or to kind of help us or empower us, we don't trust them entirely, right? There is always a doubt in one corner of our minds as to what their intentions are, whether they'll really be able to deliver, so on and so forth. And then what these two make us do is to devise certain coping strategies which often end up being inefficient or unhelpful, because one, we are developing a strategy for a situation that's not going to occur the way we visualize it, and the second thing is, it's made in the heat of the moment, right? So that's really what happens, and in the course of the story we'll read through that. There's a whole series of funny events that occur after that, and then Briggs Beall ends up pouring the entire glass of perfume on himself, and then the whole place reeks of camphor. Right, so that's really what ends up happening in most cases in our lives too. But it's not all negative lessons from this. The one good thing that we can take from the story or this character Briggs Beall is that he firmly believes that his own revival or his own rescue is in his own hands. Right now, disregarding the way in which he wanted to do it. And this is something that we often touch upon in the therapeutic setting where when we talk to people, we tell them, look, as people who are guidance counselors or in any helping profession for that matter, we are going to be able to hold a mirror. We are going to be able to give you the psychological safety and maybe hold that space for you. But then growth, improvement, exploring strengths, leveraging the strengths, and overcoming any limiting belief or behaviors is in the hands of those that we are volunteering with or working with, right? And so Briggs Beall, in that sense, by first setting the alarm clock, right, and then maybe by choosing to allow the cousin, and also by having a precautionary glass of aromatic perfume on the side table, made sure that he was always taking ownership of the situation, of what could potentially let him live on, right? So this is something, or rather these are certain things that occurred to me in terms of how Briggs Beall can be both a do and a don't role model for us in terms of how we deal with our anxiety and fear. So next time when we are fearful or we experience anxiety, we can ask ourselves, are we being reasonable, or are we being Briggs Beall? If we are being Briggs Beall, then we can ask ourselves, how can we deal with this or think about this differently? And when it comes to taking ownership of the situation, right, and walking the path towards growth and improvement, we can ask ourselves, are we being Briggs Beall, again, in terms of taking ownership, right? And if we are not Briggs Beall, we can ask ourselves, how can I be Briggs Beall and seize the initiative, right? Because at the end of the day, growth and improvement rests in our own hands. I hope this was useful. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this video.